The Mannin Line with Beth Espey.
Well, first of all, good afternoon. It is Beth in for Andy today and tomorrow. Chris Quirk is on the phones and we would love to hear from you. Whatever you want to talk about, 66 13 68, or you can text us 166 177, or you can find us on WhatsApp as well. The email's studio@manxradio.com. Some of the things in the news today we've just been hearing about in the bulletin there. Would you like to pay your car tax monthly? It could be an option in the future, but only if you pay online. And a new Castle Russian high school that could be built by March 2029. Perhaps you've got some thoughts on that or anything else at all this afternoon. As I say, we'd love to hear from you. Let's start, though, by catching up with what's happening in the House of Keys. I think I'm right, John Moss, in saying that's the penultimate sitting before Christmas tomorrow.
It is, yes.
What sort of things on the agenda?
Well, one interesting item which is likely to raise debate. Interesting if they stuck a bit of mistletoe up in the middle of the chamber, then it'd be a keys under the mistletoe, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would.
Yes. Anyway, putting that to one side, there's 15 questions on the order paper. The first one is about the Barclays closure down in Castan Square. With Mr. Morehouse asking, well, basically, if the government was told it was going to happen beforehand. I don't think that's likely. I think Barclays, being such a mega organisation, they tend to go ahead and talk about it later. That's the first question. It's one of these starred questions, which means that the member has priority for one question. Each member can ask one question, goes to the top of the list, and that's a starred question, but there's only one of those. Interestingly, the questions that come after that, there are 5 which come from Mr. Thomas, and all of them, somewhere in the question, feature the word Kroger. Mr. Thomas has been pursuing the licence details of Kroger for some considerable time, and that's going to happen tomorrow. The questions, 15 of them, once they're over, attention will turn to the Isle of Man Constitution Bill. Now, this is not what it sounds like. It sounds fairly dry. It is actually the bishop's vote, basically, asking whether the bishop should lose his vote, his or her vote, should I say, for a new bishop is in the making. And also, therefore, should they not appear on the quorum? In other words, if they don't have a vote, there's no point in them making up the numbers that would vote, etc. A quorum, incidentally, if you don't know what a quorum is, it comes from the Latin word quorum omnum en esse volumnus, which is basically the way they used to choose a committee in medieval times.
I've written that down.
You've written that down, and it's a useful thing to come up at Christmas dinners and things like that if the conversation's flagging.
John, can you remind us how we've got to this point with the bishop's vote? Because a listener might remember that this isn't the first time in recent history that it's come up.
It's come up time and time again and has basically been rejected time and time again. This particular time it's come through very quickly because, in effect, this bill is just one... Well, apart from the thing about the quorum, it's just one thing. Basically, should the bishop have a vote or should the bishop not have a vote? So it was given leave to be introduced only a couple of weeks ago. And now here it is, wham, the bill has appeared. Now, normally when permission is given, the member has to go away and scratch his or her heads and work out how to put together a bill and speak to the legislative draftsman. In this case, it's a very simple thing, so it's appeared very quickly. Now, it may lead to quite a substantial debate. Now, normally first readings go through on the nod, as they say, basically. It's a courtesy. The member is introducing a bill. Yes, go ahead. We'll talk about it in length, starting with the second reading. But in this case, because it is what it is, it may prompt a much lengthier debate, so we must wait and see.
Have we got a sense, do we think, of how the members of the House of Keys are divided on this
issue?
Well,
it's very narrowly at the moment. What was it, 13-11, was it? I think the vote that actually allowed it to be going through it and be introduced. So if some members were keeping their powder dry and vote one way or the other, I don't know. It's difficult to tell. I mean, some members, I remember years ago, some members used to start off arguing one way and then after about 3/4 of an hour decided they'd turn
convince
around. Convince themselves. They'd argued so eruditely and so wonderfully that they'd convince themselves to go the other way. So we don't know, but I think it's likely to be close. And I would imagine the gallery should have quite a few people in it as well, which will be interesting as well. The other bits of business, incidentally, that will be discussed, it's an income tax bill, which is fairly dry. It goes through immense detail, not as much as one of the other bills which is going through, which is the Fines and Penalties Bill, which goes down all sorts of bits of legislation, because it's basically altering certain levels of fine and penalty in all these bits of legislation, and there are a lot of them, I can tell you that. There is also a council amendment on the Sanctions Bill, which is coming forward, and that's coming into Keys as well to be voted on. So it depends on the length of the sitting tomorrow, on how long the Bishop's vote debate takes, and it could be quite a long time.
And we should say this isn't something that we broadcast. We obviously broadcast questions, but John, you will be in the chamber?
I'll be in the chamber for the 15 questions, and at the end of the 15 questions, I have to say, well, that concludes the entertainment for the day. Hand you back to Mark Tiley with the Breakfast Show, because that's we have to seek permission to broadcast, and we've had permission to broadcast Keys questions, but not the business that comes after. So you will be able to listen on the internet, because it's broadcast on the internet as well by Tynwald. So you will be able to continue listening. Alternatively, take yourselves down to the Keys chamber. Be early, because I think it could be quite packed on the benches. Have a seat and watch it all happening in front of your disbelieving eyes.
John Moss, thank you very much indeed. Any thoughts on what John had to say there? We'd love to talk to you over the next hours, 66 13 68. You can text or email us as well your thoughts. G has been in touch to say we need a seawall because of rising water levels and the sparkly new boat can't sail because of low water. He says you couldn't write a better comedy. And Richie has been in touch to say, worrying about the tides at Douglas and the silting at Heysham Port preventing the Manxman sailing or docking. I wonder, might it be partly due to the extra silt brought down the rivers due to climate change and flooding? Or perhaps was the Manxman built too big and deep, drafted for Douglas and Heysham to adequately receive her? Did anyone here, asked Richie, check these things out before the service started? John, while you're still here, we obviously, I don't remember directly the Ben McCree coming into service back in 1998, but I know there's been a lot of talk about the Manxman in recent weeks. But there has been that reminder that when the Ben McCree first came in, there were similar conversations, similar teething problems. What do you remember of that?
One thing I do remember is when it first came in, it was sitting quite high in the water because the idea was to bring in the Ben and at that stage load it up over the years. So as the need grew, it would go deeper and deeper in the water with more and more freight. So initially, when it was sailing, as I remember it, it was quite high in the water. There was this thing about when it first came, because it was different from any of the other boats we'd had, you could see Bradford Town Hall from its bridge on a high tide. But it was fairly high, so I presume it didn't affect it. You have to remember with the ports across the way, including Heysham, it's all sand over there. When it was built, they had a great job building harbours because it was basically sand. It's always been a problem over there. There have been ports along that coast that have had to close because they've silted up. And Heysham is, well, it's the one alternative apart from the Mersey we've got for putting in. So basically, yes, sand and silt has been habitually a problem in that area.
OK, any thoughts on that? We have just had a message from Daphne Kane, MHK, says there will be no debate on the Bishop's vote as the Isle of Man Constitution Bill is only down for the first reading. So that debate might come at the second reading, perhaps? Well,
it'll probably go through on the nod. I don't know. They probably, yes, we'll wait and see. Some member may take the opportunity to speak, I'm not sure. But yes, you're quite right, Daphne. Indeed, habitually, the people just put it through on the nod. But this is quite contentious.
We'll see what happens. John, thank you very much. Let's go to the lines now. We can join Ken. Good afternoon, Ken.
Good afternoon. I just want to keep people in the picture about the saga of Manx Gas at Isle of Man Energy.
OK.
I've just had my sixth bill for the same period for a different amount. This happened 2 months ago. Basically, I got an estimate for this time, an estimate which was totally wrong. And they eventually agreed a figure of £45. And I've just had a reminder letter for £89. You owe us £89.
So you had that initial one. You say this is, what did you say, Ken? This is the sixth one you've received?
It's the sixth one. We agreed on the fifth. We agreed the fifth one as £46. And then I've just had a reminder letter. This is the sixth communique from owing 89. Because they say there's something wrong with their accounting system. They don't know it. They don't know why. But it's the reason because when they sent me the estimated bill, which was totally wrong, they've still kept it on file, even though they've reduced it to this agreed figure.
Ken, could it be because obviously there's been more usage since you received the last bill?
No. I keep a weekly check on how much it's their accounting system. Now,
Okay.
the lady was very good until she said a comment from Glasgow. This wouldn't be the problem. You wouldn't have a problem if you paid your bills on time. What? So I've referred it to the OFT and Manx Gas in the Isle of Man are supposed to be getting back to me sometime. But the same thing happened 2 months ago. I'm just a bit worried that people are going to get payment reminders. People panic and pay it, which is the wrong amount.
It is, and it's a worrying time, isn't it, Ken? I think obviously more people using their gas at the moment. I mean, how is it affecting you having to sort of deal with what is clearly a misinterpretation of your bill?
Well, it's not a problem for me because I must admit I get free phone calls from Sure, so I don't mind hanging on. They answer the phone in Glasgow within about 2 minutes. But when she had to speak to a manager, 20-odd minutes later, they got, the answer. They said, "Oh, sorry to keep you waiting," but it's just the fact that they're sending out these payment reminders for the wrong amount, and they don't seem that bothered.
So have you been in touch after this latest one, Ken?
Well, yes, I've had the old FT, and they say Manx Gas will get back in touch with me to discuss it, why their accounting system is basically wrong.
Okay.
The actual bill agreed was right to a pound, but this thing's double the price.
Yeah.
And the same thing happened 2 months ago. But to tell me that it wouldn't be a problem if I paid my bills on time, because then you wouldn't get the reminding letter, which of course doesn't have the barcode on, so you can't use it to pay at the post office.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there, Ken, isn't there? Yeah.
Don't know.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed for giving us...
As for the steam packet farce, well, yes, they do not know the tides are going to be low.
So this is about the steam packet sailings being rescheduled. They're leaving later from this afternoon than originally expected. I don't know, it's not the first time, I suppose, it's happened, Ken. I mean, I remember over the years, because of different tidal times.
I do worry about the half-tide dock when she's turning with a big, propulsion and throwing all silt up against, in the Mersey, which might be another problem shortly. OK, thank you.
All right, Ken, thank you so much. Lovely to talk to you. That was Ken there talking primarily about gas bills. I don't know where you're up to with your bills, whether you think everything's OK, whether you've had any issues with wrong amounts and how you're finding the process of getting in touch, trying to sort that thing out. Pammy, thank you very much for your message about the bishop. I nearly read that out, but just about stopped myself. Andy says it's shameful that Laurie Hooper has had the overworked draftspeople take time to do the bishop's bill when there is A, food bank, B, homeless people, and 3, healthcare issues that need resolving as a priority, not diverting attention. Hopefully the voters in Ramsey will remember that he's wasted their time at the next election. I have stopped my direct debit, says texter ending 439, and I take a meter reading at the end of each month, so there's no dispute as my reading is a photograph on my iPad. Texter ending 762, this is Francis, good afternoon to you. 2 things. Did I hear it just right there that tomorrow's the last Tynwald sitting? No, he said tomorrow is the penultimate House of Keys sitting before Christmas. I think we're right on that one. And then they're back in January after that. And is it good news? Ramsey residents are in a position for a rates reduction. The MUA have turned down the water pressure on purpose. So that should mean a reduction in water pressure, meaning a reduction in charges then. Any other thoughts on anything that we've been hearing this afternoon? 166 177 is our text number. You can email studio@manxradio.com. You can find us on WhatsApp as well, or even better, Chris Quirk is waiting to talk to you on the phones, 66 13 68. Manx Radio. It is the Mannin Line on Manx Radio, 12:23 now. And John, you're back.
Yes, I mentioned earlier about the first reading about it. Possible to speak to it. But yes, just put it this way, and Daphne Kane rang up and said, no, it goes through on the nod. Well, generally, standing orders say it has to go through, basically, on the nod. But if a member does wish to speak on it, they can actually ask for standing orders to be suspended, for it to be open for debate. So it is possible, unlikely, but possible.
You've given them the idea now, though.
Anyway. They're well versed with their standing orders. Every one of them knows. They probably wake up in the morning spouting it. I don't know.
Who knows? John, thank you very much for that clarification. We will keep you up to date with what's happening with that constitutional bill. Just want to read this email from H, who says, can I ask what news Manx Radio provides? I listen waiting to hear what's happening on the island. For example, over the weekend, an active police operation was ongoing in Douglas. When I listened at 11 p.m. last night, absolutely nothing on local news, including sport or travel delays, were mentioned. Instead, a litany of government briefings from departments and what various ministers said. Please reassure me that Manx Radio has not become just a government mouthpiece, or has it? So this is a really interesting one, H, and I should say, to start off with, it's one of the reasons that we say at the end of our news bulletins that you can keep up to date with what's happening by following manxradio.com or social media, because that is where a lot of the information is shared. Certainly over the weekend. We don't, unfortunately, have somebody here until 11 p.m. Those headlines at the end of the day are a wrap-up of what's happened, and generally we have to be really careful that those aren't time-specific issues that could be out of date by the time they go out to the general public. So with regard to the police operations, we have been in touch with the constabulary today. We're hoping to bring an update on what has been happening as soon as we get it. But if you look at our Facebook page from over the weekend, as soon as there was an update from the police about what had happened with the various incidents, they were shared to Manx Radio's social media pages. So I hope that clears it up for you. Now, we have heard that an estimated timeline has been published for the new Castle Rushen High School. It is thought the building could be completed in March 2029. Is this the closest we've got to a new facility? Well, Amy Griffiths joins me now. She's been following the story this morning. And Amy, I think it's fair to say this has been years in the making.
It really has. And it was first built in 1961. So the current buildings serve the community for over 60 years now. It started with 480 students, but then extensions here and there have been added over time, and this new school now caters for nearly 900, so it's almost doubled capacity in that time. But for nearly a decade now, the need for a new school building at Castle Rushen has been clear to staff, children and local MHKs. In 2021, a report found the site was increasingly not fit for purpose and a below-par environment for students. So money was first set aside in the 2016 budget for the build, with £50,000 allocated for initial design work. Running out of breath.
It's just so exciting, isn't
it? It was thought the project was, as a whole, would cost between £30 and £40 million. And then, despite being described as essential then, a new school was still expected to be 7 years away, i.e. this year. But here we are in 2023 and new plans for the build haven't even begun, let alone any building work.
So that's not the only funding, though, that you're talking about there. That's not the only funding that the building project has had, though, is it?
No, it's not. So since that first £50,000, multiple budgets have promised to invest in the new school. In 2018, the then Treasury Minister Alfred Cannon allocated a further £445,000 to the project. Where am I? The following year then, the Education Minister Graham Cregeen admitted that, despite coming to the end of the design phase, there was a discrepancy between what his department wanted financially and what Treasury was willing to give. Where am I? I'm getting all lost in my notes, Beth.
Well, I think we're talking about in June, was it June 2020?
There we go. So in June 2020, £2 million was approved to start work on 4 new football pitches and a cricket pitch, so that the new school could be built on the site of the old fields. And then this year, while there was nothing in the budget for the new build itself, money was set aside for a new mobile classroom at the school, costing £230,000. So to date, that makes £2,725,000 already spent on this new facility.
Do you know, I'm glad you had to work that out, not me. Just very quickly then, Amy, what happens now?
So despite nearly £3 million already being spent and apparently coming to the end of a design phase in 2019, it does seem that we're now back to square one. The current Education Minister, Julie Edge, has published a new timeline for the work, and first on that list is hiring a new design team. So it's hoped positions including a quantity surveyor, architect and planning supervisor will all be in place by the 29th of February next year. Then the design phase is expected to start again and has been split into 3 stages, all needing approval and expected to take 106 weeks. Then final TINWL approval will then be sought for the designs in February 2026. A tender process will also need to be carried out, and if all of that goes to plan, there could actually be spades in the ground by November 2026. Then construction is likely to take 30 months with a potential completion date of March 2029. And it's stressed that these are only estimations at this stage.
Amy, I'm not surprised you're out of breath. I'm out of breath just listening to that.
It's the stairs up as well.
Amy Griffiths, thank you very much indeed. If you want to read that in full, you can go to manxradio.com. OK, let's get back to the lines now. And Wilf is with us on line 2. Good afternoon, Wilf.
Hiya. This is just my personal sort of take on this. You know, the Bishop and his vote in the House of Keys. Well, I was never in favour of the Bishop being there at all. Because we've got that many different nationalities now living on the Isle of Man. To be fair to all of them, they should all have their own religious representative in the Keys. Now, that can't happen because there's that many of them different ones. That's not going to happen. So I think, apart from not having a vote, I don't think he should be there at all. It should be out altogether. There should be no religion in the Keys at all, because we've got that many different ones in the Isle of Man now. It just doesn't make sense.
It's
That's just one thing.
Yeah, it's an
ahead.
interesting point, Wilf, and certainly one that's been debated in recent months. I suppose the argument could be that the Bishop, regardless of thinking about faith, is there, I suppose, to provide a moral compass, a measured view that perhaps other people might not have thought of. I don't know. What do you reckon?
Well, there again, you see, all religions, as far as I can see, they're just a way of controlling the public. That's just my take on it. That's the way I think. You see, I'm a non-believer anyway. In any of these religions, so you know, that's just my take on it.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and honestly, Wilf, I think it's something that will divide opinion forevermore. I mean, if we go back to the Viking times, they prayed to their gods. Do they have some form of religious person in there? I don't know. It is an interesting one.
Well, you see, yeah, but the thing is, if I was going to do any praying, I'd be praying to the sun. Because if that goes out, we're dead. We're all dead in 24 hours. Now, but the only thing is, when you look back in history, the Aztecs, that was their religion, the sun. The Spaniards come in and wiped them all out. So it didn't do them much good either, you see. So anyway, that's beside the point. Now, the other thing I was going to mention was that decoration. Well, I don't know what you would call it, actually. It looks like a half-deflated bell tent in Ramsey Square in place of a proper Christmas tree. I just wanted to say, as a Ramsey commissioner, I had nothing to do with that. In fact, that was asked about a couple of years ago, maybe, about getting one of these things, and I think possibly I was the only one who voted against it that I can remember. That I said, no, that's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous amount of money, and if we can't have a proper tree, we might as well have nothing.
Wilf, can you tell us?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, would you be able to tell us where the whole idea came from? What were the premise for having that tree then?
The idea came from the management, if you like, not the commissioners. There was no commissioners actually brought this up to have a fake tree, which it doesn't even look like a tree. But anyway, actually, there was. I haven't got this Facebook thing. I haven't got none of that. All I've got is a mobile phone, which I'm talking to you on now, and I can't actually handle that really. But the thing is, I heard on someone, a kid come on Facebook and said they thought it was possibly something to do with, like the fish we have on the North Prom, where you put plastic bottles in. They thought it was some sort of another bottle bank of some sort to get rid of your plastic bottle. That's what we thought of it, or that's what the child thought of it. And that's what I think of it. To me, it's just total rubbish, expensive rubbish. And that is another point as well, that even the trees we get, proper trees, like we have down at the courthouse, they cost a lot of money because we've got to get our trees through DEFA, who gets it from the Forestry Board, and there's other places where we can get trees, good trees, much, much cheaper. But they just won't do that. They always go for the most expensive thing they can find. And that's why we've got heavy rates in Ramsey. It's simple as that.
Do you know, Wilf, I'm just going to...
They don't listen to sense.
Somebody has, and I think I'm going to take this tongue in cheek, Wilf, but somebody's just texted to say, why are you arguing about a Christmas tree, which is a religious symbol?
No, I'm not arguing about it.
No, I understand that.
I'm arguing about the rubbish that they've put in place for a Christmas tree.
All right, Wilf, thank you very much indeed. Lovely to talk to you as ever. That was Wilf there. Let's go to line 3 now, and we can join Eddie. Good afternoon, Eddie.
Hello there. I was reading in the Courier a fortnight ago, and the Steam Packet were in for the gaming licenses for the 1st of January. And I noticed that the only 2 votes mentioned was the Mannin and the Manxman. So I'm just wondering, does that mean they've gone and got shut of the Ben McCrae?
Well, we know there has been an issue in the Ben McCrae's in dry dock at the moment being fixed, but I don't know the answer to that question. Yeah. I would have thought we would have known about that, Eddie.
Well, you'd have thought so, but by the looks of things, if they're not putting in for the gaming licenses for it, doesn't look as if she's going to be anywhere involved next season.
Okay, let me ask that question.
Have one of those for your gaming license. So there's something going on. I don't know why it's so secret. I think they should come out and admit whatever they're going to do. And also, we've just heard about Carnival withdrawing from this fire or hire system that the Steam Packet is talking about. I think they should be thinking about doing the same thing because of the bad publicity it'll give the island. At the end of the day, the Steam Packet now belongs to the island. And I thought it was to save our safe passages and our seaway. By the looks of things, we're walking into a dispute and nobody's doing anything about it to try and stop it.
All right, Eddie. Well, let me ask a question about the gaming licence, and hopefully I'll be able to come back with an answer tomorrow, all being well.
That'd be very nice. Good of you. Thank
Wonderful.
You very much.
Take care, Eddie. Thank you so much for phoning.
And you.
That was Eddie, 66 13 68. It's the number to call if you'd like to talk about anything at all that's on your mind between now and 1. And we can go to line 1 and join Peter now. Good afternoon, Peter.
Oh, good afternoon. It's Peter Murcott here. Bishop's Vote. It is a thorough waste of time bringing this subject up again, because about 4 months ago, they had a very extensive debate in Tynwald. The voting figures in favour of keeping both the bishop and with a vote were 24 votes in favour, 8 against. Now, that was decisive. The legislature has numerous matters that it should be discussing. I notice when I look at the Tynwald paper, I see, for example, that they have a multitude of reports that come before them from all kinds of areas. And those reports just have to be picked up to be discussed. Now, if we're looking for something to discuss, there's plenty of material before the Tynwald and before the Keys, for that matter, that can be discussed. And I think it is a disgraceful waste of time discussing a subject when every argument has been rehearsed before the legislature and they've taken a decision, and I really think that they ought to have a rule that once they have decided one of these issues, an issue like this, that it ought then to remain out of discussion for at least 2 years, if not more, so as not to have an undue emphasis on one particular issue when there are other very, very important issues crying out for public discussion.
I hear what you're saying, Mr. Murcott, and I think I'm right in saying that you believe the bishop should have a vote in Tynwald. That is your belief. I suppose if it was an issue which you didn't agree with, I wonder how you'd feel then.
Well, I wouldn't expect it to come up. No, I would feel exactly the same, because I think that once you've debated an issue and once you have decided an issue, you've got to then join the queue, and you should be quite a way down the queue to bring it up again. It's the same as if you pass a piece of legislation. That it is very unsatisfactory to keep on changing course. One of the rules of the rule of law, which is not often discussed, is that, for example, say when you make a law, you should not be changing the law too often, because people need to have time to adjust to what it is. Now, this, of course, is a slightly different issue, but it still follows the same principle, that you can't just waste time. And I do feel that our legislature is not really getting its head around some of the very important issues that it needs to discuss. For example, about Manx agriculture, for example, about homelessness on the Isle of Man, the access to means of travel. We keep on hearing about delays with regard to the shipping. There are plenty of things. If they want something to discuss, they could find plenty to start usefully discussing. This one is really wasting valuable time, and it's irrelevant that I happen to have agreed with the outcome of it. And there's another thing here, though I said this before, and I'm now, in a sense, having to waste time ringing in. Once you start tinkering around with the Constitution, you've got to consider, and this was considered before, that you start changing one aspect of it, but you've got to look at what the subsequent things would be. The legislature likes to have a Tynwald Day ceremony and a Tynwald Day service. It likes to use the facility of the Church of England, so that you've got the pomp and ceremony of that, and then you march up to Tynwald Hill. Now, if you're going to start dismantling all that in the legislature, you've got to remember that you can hardly use the offices of the Church of England if you're now going to take away the bishop's vote on whatever grounds. And so therefore, you'll have a situation where what means a lot, I believe, to a lot of people, that instead of having the pageantry and all the ceremony on Tynwald Day, that your members will just simply draw up in their cars, get out, just run up Tynwald Hill and go and read the laws out, and a very important part of Manx history will have been changed. And I know that there are people in the Isle of Man who would feel very strongly about that. But that isn't the primary thing. I'm just talking about what is down the road, so to speak, what are subsequent effects of doing this. But this has all been discussed and this has all been rehearsed, and I think it's long, long overdue for matters before the legislature to be those that are of pressing importance to ordinary people, and one of them has got to be about the supply of food, about the impact that is having where certain changes have taken place, and the impact on Manx agriculture. And there are many, many other things like homelessness, as I've already mentioned. So they're just wasting time. And I've made that point 3 times, repeated myself, and it doesn't get any better for saying that.
Peter Murcott, as ever, thank you very much for taking the time to phone us this afternoon.
OK, thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye then.
Bye-bye. That was Peter Murcott talking about the bishop's vote. And he has mentioned before that if we went down the road of removing the bishop, or perhaps even just removing his vote, removing that religious element, would we then reasonably be able to have all a Tynwald Day ceremony involving the Royal Chapel of St John? What do you think of that? It's a really good point, and one we will put to the people behind this move. Still a few minutes if you'd like to get in touch about anything on your mind this afternoon. 66 13 68 is the number to call. Chris is waiting to talk to you. We've got some texts and emails to get through, and we'll go through those after this.
The Mannin Line with Beth Espey.
And it is lovely to have your company this afternoon. Thank you so much for your texts and emails. Let's go through as many of those as we can do right now. But if you do want to call, still time before 1 p.m, 66 13 68. Andy says, regarding gas company bills, no one should pay by direct debit. Cancel it immediately and do a standing order so you can control what money is taken and when from your bank account. If they take money by direct debit, you'll be facing a struggle to get it back. Remember the lady who had tens of thousands taken before she knew it. That's according to Andy. And there is a message here from G. Surely there are greater priorities than giving money to the DOI to look at vehicle tax payment methods. That's a story talking about the fact that you might be able to pay monthly if you pay online. That's being considered. The Kroger website has been down for a few weeks now, apparently. Says an emailer there. H says, I'm almost certain Manx Gas isn't telling the truth about meter readers. My meter reading was an estimate, even though I know on the day the reader allegedly called, I was in all day and the meter was accessible in an open porch. No card was left either. I've already complained about this as I was recently landed with a massive bill after several estimates. I know roughly what date the reading was done, so I've emailed to say that from now on I will send a reading on the 15th of every other month, take a photograph, and I expect my bill to be based on my reading. Does anyone know why the mountain road was closed at times over the weekend? I think there was certainly one incident where it was icy over the weekend off the top of my head. And this texter ending 762 also says, as for Manx Radio News online service, I'm sure it's good, but not everyone has the internet. You know, it's a really good point. If there is anything significant, though, that happens while we have a live presenter here, and we do until midnight, then the information is read out. So anything to do with road closures or anything significant like that. So I take your point. Obviously, not everybody has the internet. Certainly not everybody. Just hearing from Wilf earlier, he doesn't use social media like Facebook, but it is very well used over here. And certainly we find that that's one of the best ways of getting information out. Totally insulting that the bishop is considered more moral than the rest of us, says texter ending 768. Well said, Wilf. And Tony C says, how can you have no religion in government? You would only have to elect atheists because everyone has their own beliefs and would be influenced by them. And Dick has been in touch to say, probably me. But does anyone else think King Canute knew more about tides than the steam packet did when they bought the Manxman? But if you happen to look at Ship AIS online, which shows the live location of every vessel in the sea at every time, you'll see a lot of other ship ferries sailing by, particularly in the Irish Sea, when the Manxman is tucked up nice and warm in Douglas, as weathers are a bit rough or there's a bit of silt in the sea at Heysham. However, there are ferry and airline companies around the world who cancel flights and sailings because the boat or plane is half full, and you save, says Dick, an awful lot of money and fuel by taking all the freight and passengers of a half-empty boat and merging it with another one later in the day or the next day. But Dick says, I'm sure that would never happen here, and the doubling of sailings being cancelled is down to just bad luck. But my word, hasn't the steam packet saved hundreds of pounds in fuel by cancelling so many more sailings this year than before? But everyone still gets there, maybe a little later than planned. I think we were talking about this a little bit earlier, Dick, and I think it's fair to say the silting issues aren't new. This has happened definitely before. It happens at certain times. So I don't know whether that's entirely fair. But again, questions that we can put to the steam packet, and they are good to get a response to us. Alan says, Douglas Council aren't being very Christmassy. No trees on the terrace or decorations, only in Strand Street. What do you make of that? Have you noticed Christmas decorations out and about? Some people, Alan would say, it's still too early for Christmas decorations because it's not December yet. What do you make of that? Texter ending 350. Everyone seems to forget government sacked bus drivers and started them on new contracts. Now the steam packet is owned by the Manx government. H says, a Christmas tree is not a religious symbol. I take your point, H, but I think, and do correct me if I'm wrong here, that Christians justify the custom of using Christmas trees on religious grounds by explaining that the evergreen tree can symbolise eternal life. So I think that might be where that point came in. Somebody ending in 706 says Mr Murcott is waffling and using smoke and mirrors to stop the bishop losing his vote. I think what Mr Murcott was really saying was that this has been debated and in the recent past, and the debate ended with people deciding not to change things. So I think Mr Murcott questioning why then it's being taken through the House of Keys, and perhaps this issue being debated when are there more serious issues that might benefit from a bit of attention. If Tynwald expresses an oath of loyalty to the monarch and the monarch is the head of the church, then there is no conflict in Tynwald using the chapel at St John's. That is a text ending 475, because that is in the service of the monarch as the supreme head of the church. There is absolutely no reason the bishop cannot still be part of the Tynwald ceremony. He can even sit on the hill if necessary. Otherwise, he can wait in the church to do the job he's paid for as leader of the church, unless the church is going to throw a tantrum and use blackmail, saying no vote, no church service. The bishop is not an elected politician and has no democratic right to vote. End of, says Sue. I've just received my electricity bill and notice the price per kilowatt hour has increased to 30 pence per kilowatt hour from 28 in the UK. The average cost is 27. Would have to look at that in more detail before I can comment on that one. Some thoughts on tax. What do the police have to say? In the UK, it has increased their workload, says Andrew. Come back to that one. Let's quickly go to the lines and join David now. Good afternoon, David.
Hi, Beth. I just want to get on quickly there and support Mr Murcott. I don't go to church as much as I should do, but I'm still I would say, God-fearing individual. When we're in Tynwald or the Keys, I think it's a bit a nonsense now when they go to Tynwald Day. They were at the remembrance services, so they all went to church. And I just wondered, I don't know what you have the figures now, how many people actually go to prayers in the Keys or Tynwald. Maybe you could find that out and just ask them why don't they just not conform, but just go with what tradition has always been. And I think it's, like Mr Murcott said, it's a waste of time. Look at all the legislation they should be doing. And the final thing I'll just say quickly is they can't even get their finger out on the vaping bill and get it organised so it's banned to protect children and individuals from smoking these things. Thanks.
All right, David. I'll just one thing, I suppose, talking about the bishop's vote.
Yep.
There will be some people who say, we need to make some progress. Times change and you have to reflect on changing times. And so actually, isn't it right that this is debated fully?
I think, like Mr Murcott said, it's been debated some time ago there. Now, we're in a transitional period, as far as I'm concerned, regarding where they're going to choose another one. So can you imagine what it's like in the UK now, where the people who choose the next bishop, or possibly not, for the island, and they say to, look, the Isle of Man doesn't like us anymore, the Isle of Man's doing something different. They've never had a mandate from the voters in the Isle of Man to have that. Maybe they should have a referendum and see what happens.
Great idea, David. Thank you very much indeed. Lovely to talk to you as ever. Thanks for calling. That is David Quirk there, quickly hanging up. The repeat bishop meeting after a decision has been made is normal government policy. The horse tramway was agreed and the money allocated, says John. And Joe says the majority of Christian festivals, along with other major religions, are based around pagan followings and festivals. Do we need a bishop in Tynwald, asked Joe. The answer is no. We haven't got time to talk about the possibility of a bishop referendum now. Maybe that's something we can pick up tomorrow. Would you be in favour of that? Would you like your voice heard on this matter? Maybe you've spoken to your MHKs and you've told them what you think. But yeah, let's pick that one up tomorrow. Vehicle checks. The number of cars on the mountain road with one headlight working is incredible. Also in fog and low cloud. Cars having no lights on at all, or older cars with their tiny side lights on. The police should sit at Windy Corner and take a few photographs, then follow up with words of advice. That is a message in from Chris in Andreas. That was in reaction to the news that police have been carrying out their winter checks. 213 cars stopped, and some issues with penalty notices, and given some words of advice. Thank you, as ever, for your company and your contributions today. It is absolutely lovely to hear from you. We go through every single text message and WhatsApp message that we receive. Apologies if I haven't got round to yours yet. We have had quite a few, but I will read them all and come back to you with them tomorrow. Thanks very much to Chris Quirk on the phones. Remember, you can always call if you think of something while we're not on air. 682 631. Leave a message and we'll play it out on the show. Coming up next, it's Christy D with 1 to 3. So whatever you're doing this afternoon, have a great one, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.